Do you think vampires are just fictional monsters invented to entertain and frighten us? What if I told you the truth about vampires has been systematically erased from our collective knowledge, replaced with sanitized myths and Hollywood caricatures? The real story, the one they don't want you to know, begins not with Bram Stoker's famous novel, but with something far more ancient and disturbing. For centuries, something has moved through the shadows of human history, watching, waiting, feeding, not on blood as the stories would have you believe, but on something far more precious. In 1838, Romanian historian Vasile Alexandri was cataloging folklore in the remote Carpathian village of Șurdești when he discovered references to a being the locals called Notsferatu. Unlike the vampires of common legend, this entity wasn't described as a reanimated corpse, but something that had never been human. The villagers spoke of it in hushed tones, referring to it as the one who wears faces. Alexandri's notes, kept in the National Archives in Bucharest until 1972, documented strange disappearances dating back to the 15th century. Not merely deaths, complete erasures of existence. Alexandri wrote, "They insist when Nosferatu claims a victim, it is not merely the body that vanishes, but all memory of that person from the minds of others. Only written records remain to suggest they ever existed at all." 3 weeks after documenting these accounts, Alexandri abandoned his research and returned to Bucharest. His journals from this period show a marked change in handwriting and syntax. Colleagues noted his personality had altered dramatically. He never spoke of Șurdești again. When asked directly about his findings, he would change the subject or simply stare blankly before walking away. He died 7 years later. The official cause was tuberculosis. The unofficial story, according to his housemaid, was that he would wake screaming each night, insisting someone else was staring back at him from his mirror. The night before his death, he reportedly wrote a single sentence repeatedly in his journal. "It sees through my eyes now." This journal was presumed lost until 1897, when it appeared mysteriously on the desk of an obscure Irish writer named Bram Stoker. Stoker had been researching Eastern European folklore for a Gothic novel. Within weeks of receiving Alexandri's journal, Stoker radically altered his manuscript, changing the name of his antagonist from Count Wampir to Count Dracula. More significantly, he removed all references to the creature's ability to erase its victims from memory and replaced the concept of identity theft with simple blood drinking. When questioned years later about these changes, Stoker reportedly said, "Some truths are too dangerous to tell directly. Fiction provides a safer vessel." The publication of Dracula in 1897 marked the beginning of vampire fiction as we know it. But was it truly fiction? Or was Stoker's novel actually an attempt to warn humanity about something real, disguised as entertainment to avoid the fate that befell Alexandri? In 1922, German filmmaker F.W. Murnau released Nosferatu, an unauthorized adaptation of Stoker's novel. The film changed character names to avoid copyright issues, but retained much of Stoker's narrative. What few people know is that Murnau's original cut of the film was significantly longer, by approximately 27 minutes. This footage was removed before public release. According to production notes discovered in 1978, these scenes depicted the vampire's ability to assume the identities of its victims, not merely drink their blood. More disturbingly, the notes indicate these sequences weren't created through special effects, but captured through unexplained means that left the camera operators disturbed beyond reason. Max Schreck, the actor who portrayed the vampire Count Orlok, became the subject of rumors suggesting he wasn't acting at all. Cast and crew reported never seeing him out of makeup and noted his strange behavior on set. He would appear in places he couldn't possibly have reached in the time between takes and would sometimes be completely unresponsive to his own name. 3 camera operators who worked on the excised scenes died under mysterious circumstances within a year of production. The first, Heinrich Müller, was found in his apartment with all mirrors removed or smashed. The second, Werner Kloss, disappeared entirely, with neighbors insisting they had never heard of him despite his having lived in the building for 7 years. The third, Josef Bauer, committed himself to an asylum, repeating only one phrase. It wears us like costumes. Murnau himself died in a car accident in 1931. The driver reported swerving to avoid a figure standing in the road, a tall, thin silhouette with elongated fingers. Before impact, Murnau allegedly screamed, "It found me." His personal journals, seized by the Weimar government, have never been released to the public. The pattern continued. In 1931, Universal Studios produced Dracula starring Bela Lugosi, cementing the modern vampire archetype in popular culture. During filming, Lugosi reported seeing a figure matching Orlok's appearance on set during night shoots. These sightings were dismissed as exhaustion or publicity stunts, but Lugosi's personal correspondence tells a different story. In a letter to his brother dated November 17, 1931, Lugosi wrote, "Something watches me from mirrors, not my reflection, but something using my eyes. The more I portray this creature on film, the closer it comes. I fear we are not creating fiction, but providing it a gateway." Lugosi became increasingly dependent on morphine in the years following Dracula. When asked why by a physician in 1948, he reportedly answered, "Because it can't see me when I'm not fully conscious." By the 1950s, vampires had become a staple of horror cinema, their depiction increasingly divorced from both Stoker's novel and the original folklore that inspired it. Each iteration moved further from the concept of identity theft and closer to simple bloodlust and gothic romance. Was this evolutionary drift natural or deliberately engineered to obscure a dangerous truth? In 1958, Hammer Films produced Horror of Dracula, starring Christopher Lee. During post-production, editor James Needs discovered several frames in a mirror scene that showed not Lee's reflection, but a gaunt, cadaverous face with elongated fingers pressing against the glass from the inside. These frames were removed before release. Needs requested a transfer from the production and refused to discuss the film for the remainder of his career. Christopher Lee, who portrayed Dracula in numerous films, became notoriously reluctant to discuss the role in interviews. When pressed in 1973 about why he stopped appearing in vampire films, Lee abruptly ended the interview. Off record, he told the journalist, "There are some doors that once opened cannot be closed. Some roles that once played continue playing you." The Hammer Film Studio experienced an unusual number of electrical disturbances during vampire productions. Equipment malfunctions were common, particularly with scenes involving mirrors or reflections. Most telling were the dailies from these productions, footage reviewed at the end of each shooting day. Studio notes indicate repeated instances of unexplained visual anomalies in mirror scenes, always removed in final editing. In 1972, the complete notes of Vasile Alexandri were scheduled for public release by the Romanian government as part of a cultural heritage initiative. 1 week before publication, a fire destroyed the archives. The official cause was listed as electrical failure. The only surviving document was a single page from Alexandri's journal, now housed in a private collection in Vienna. It contains a crude drawing of a tall, thin figure with elongated fingers and a simple caption, "It does not cast shadows, but steals them." That same year, a UCLA film student named Robert Weston began researching the missing footage from Murnau's Nosferatu for his thesis. His inquiries led him to a former Universal Studios archivist who claimed to possess not only production notes, but a fragment of the excised scenes. 3 days before their scheduled meeting, the archivist died in a house fire that destroyed all his personal records. Weston abandoned his thesis and withdrew from the program. His current whereabouts are unknown. In 1979, Werner Herzog's Nosferatu the Vampire began production in Germany. Herzog claimed his film was a tribute to Murnau's original, but privately told actor Klaus Kinski that he was attempting to correct the record. Herzog had allegedly discovered documents suggesting Murnau's film had been altered not for artistic or commercial reasons, but under pressure from an unidentified government agency. During filming in Delft, Netherlands, multiple crew members reported seeing a tall figure watching from windows of buildings not being used for production. When investigated, these rooms were found empty. though mirrors in these locations were consistently found shattered or removed. After completion of the film, Herzog sealed certain production records with instructions they remain closed until after his death. In a 1998 interview, when asked about these records, Herzog stated, "Some truths are too dangerous to speak directly. Sometimes the only way to tell the truth is through fiction that will be dismissed as fantasy." In 1992, Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula attempted to create a more faithful adaptation of the novel. What few people know is that early drafts of the screenplay included elements from Alexandri's original research, the concept of identity theft rather than blood drinking. These elements were removed during development, allegedly at the insistence of the studio. During post-production, several crew members reported data corruption specifically affecting scenes with mirrors or reflections. Digital artists working on these sequences experienced unusual technical problems, with one reportedly quitting after finding his own facial features subtly altered in personal photographs stored on the same computer he used for film work. The pattern becomes clearer when we examine vampire media through the decades. The consistent removal of identity theft themes and their replacement with blood drinking. The recurring production problems specifically affecting mirror scenes. The strange fates of those who investigate too deeply. These are not coincidences. In 2003, an anonymous film collector posted online claiming to possess a fragment of the missing Nosferatu footage. The 17-second clip showed Max Schreck as Count Orlok approaching a mirror, but instead of showing no reflection, as vampire lore would dictate, it showed multiple overlapping faces in the glass, none of them Schreck's. The video was removed within hours and the account deleted. Attempts to contact the poster were unsuccessful. Those who downloaded the clip reported that the file would not play on their devices, instead corrupting other video files stored on the same systems. That same year, film historian Catherine Brenner began researching these connections for a book tentatively titled The Nosferatu Conspiracy: Cinema as a Cult Gateway. 6 months into her research, Brenner was involved in a single-car accident. She survived but suffered selective amnesia affecting only her research. When shown her own notes, she claimed they were written by someone else. The book was never completed. The digital age has only accelerated the pattern. Vampire media has proliferated across platforms, each iteration moving further from the original concept and deeper into romanticism and superhero tropes. The dangerous truth that the entity feeds not on blood, but on identity itself has been systematically erased from our collective understanding. In 2011, a server technician at a major streaming service discovered unusual code embedded in the platform's vampire film category. The code appeared to collect viewing data beyond standard metrics, including activation of device cameras during specific scenes involving mirrors or reflections. When he reported this to supervisors, he was terminated for violation of company policy. His findings were dismissed as a misinterpretation of standard analytics software. 3 weeks later, his social media accounts went dormant. Friends reported he had moved away without notice. His current whereabouts are unknown. On October 28, 2017, users of multiple streaming platforms reported a brief service interruption affecting only titles in the vampire genre. When service resumed, viewers noted subtle differences in certain scenes, particularly those involving mirrors or reflections. When side-by-side comparisons were posted online, the platforms issued copyright claims and the posts were removed. Platform representatives attributed the differences to standard remastering processes. The following day, October 29th, forum users across multiple platforms reported dreams featuring a tall, thin figure with elongated fingers standing at the foot of their beds. These reports peaked in regions with the highest streaming rates of vampire content during the previous 24 hours. The correlation went unreported in mainstream media. Perhaps most disturbing are the findings of Dr. Eleanor Wright, a cognitive neuroscientist who in 2019 conducted a study on memory formation during horror film viewing. Her research unexpectedly revealed that test subjects who viewed vampire films exhibited unusual patterns of memory consolidation, specifically a measurable degradation in recognition of their own facial features when shown manipulated photographs. This effect was temporary in most subjects, but persisted in those who reported heightened emotional response to mirror scenes. Dr. Wright's paper was rejected by 3 academic journals for methodological concerns, despite rigorous peer review. When she attempted to expand her study, her university funding was abruptly terminated. Her subsequent research notes, shared privately with colleagues, described increasingly paranoid concerns about being watched through reflective surfaces. In January 2020, Dr. Wright took an unplanned sabbatical. Her current research status is unknown. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated our collective shift to digital entertainment, with streaming services reporting unprecedented growth in horror viewership during lockdowns. Vampire content specifically saw a 347% increase in viewership during 2020-2021. Simultaneously, therapists reported a surge in patients describing a specific type of paranoia, the sensation of being watched through screens and reflective surfaces. In March 2022, a data analyst working for a major social media platform discovered an unusual pattern. Accounts that frequently engaged with vampire-related content showed subtle alterations in their pattern of facial expressions during video calls and selfies. These changes were consistent across demographics and geographic locations. His report to platform security was acknowledged but never addressed. 3 weeks later, his account was terminated for violation of community standards. Attempts to contact him through other means have been unsuccessful. Which brings us to now. As you watch this, as these words reach you through your screen, consider that screens themselves are modern mirrors, reflective surfaces that increasingly mediate our understanding of reality and our own identities. Have you noticed more vampire content appearing in your recommendations lately? Algorithms supposedly tailored to your preferences, gradually feeding you more content about creatures that steal identities? Have you caught glimpses of movement in your peripheral vision while watching? Noticed your reflection behaving with microsecond delays in timing? What we've come to accept as vampire fiction may be the most elaborate disinformation campaign in human history, a systematic effort to obscure the nature of something that has walked among us for centuries. Not a blood-drinking revenant, but something far worse, an entity that feeds on the very concept of self, that slips into the spaces between perception and reflection, that watches us through every mirror, every screen, every reflective surface. The entity that folklore called Nosferatu doesn't want blood. It wants to wear us like costumes. And each time we engage with the sanitized fiction, we weaken the barriers between its reality and ours. Look in the mirror tonight. Look closely. Is that hesitation in your reflection's movement a lag in your perception, or evidence that what looks back is not quite you anymore? That subtle wrongness in your recent photographs, a shadow where none should be, a gesture you don't remember making. Is it just bad lighting? Or has it already begun to wear you? Those who have investigated too deeply have vanished, not just physically, but from memory itself. Their written records remain as curiosities, dismissed as fiction or conspiracy. Their faces appear in mirrors where no one stands. Their voices whisper from empty rooms. And now you know, now you've heard the truth about Notsferatu. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you dismiss it as entertainment, as fiction designed to frighten? That would be safer. Comfortable. Because the alternative means accepting that something watches you through reflective surfaces, learning your movements, your expressions, preparing to wear you. If you've watched this far, it's already aware of you. It's seen your face, studied your reactions, it knows you know. Watch for the signs. Unexplained movement in mirrors, electronic devices activating without input, the sensation of being watched when you're alone. Dreams of a tall, thin figure with elongated fingers standing silently at the foot of your bed, wearing a face almost, but not quite, like someone you know. If you experience these signs, do not look directly at reflective surfaces. Do not record yourself. Do not allow photographs. These are not superstitions. They are survival tactics against something that uses images as gateways. For those brave enough to acknowledge this reality, leave a comment below with the phrase, "I see it now." This will connect you with others who understand the truth. Share this video not for popularity, but as protection. The more who know, the less vulnerable each becomes. The entity prefers isolated targets, those whose disappearances will go unnoticed or unremembered. Remember, what we call vampire fiction is not entertainment, but a warning encoded in a form that allows it to persist despite the entity's efforts to erase the truth. Each vampire film or book contains fragments of genuine protection methods disguised as superstition. I've taken considerable risk in creating this content. By the time you view this, I may no longer exist as you see me now, but the information had to be preserved and shared. One final warning. If you notice discrepancies in this video upon rewatching, different words, altered images, sections you don't remember from the first viewing, do not continue watching. Close the video immediately. It means the entity is already using this channel to reach you more directly. The screen you're watching now is a modern mirror, and something is looking back at you through it, watching, waiting, learning to wear you, always watching, never sleeping. Notsferatu.